This is the sermon for June 20th, 2021, and I am continuing with the 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life by Karen Armstrong. And I'll be reading from Colossians 3:12 through 15. As God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Bear with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other. Just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in the one body, and be thankful. This is another passage that I memorized as a teenager, and I highly recommend memorizing it. It's so beautiful. People have described walking into the sanctuary as a sense of peace coming over and being clothed with that sense of peace of God's presence. This is how I feel about this passage. This is my sanctuary. So I want to review the first, I'm talking about 7, 8, 9. I want to review the first 6 real quickly because I've already talked about them. So the first one is learn about compassion. And the real question for that is, how do you stay supple in a hard world? How do you stay flexible and able to move easily in a world just fraught with difficulty? People who allow their hearts to be broken for the brokenness in the world have something that most of us don't. They have compassion, selflessness, and freedom. So if we're willing to be broken for the brokenness of the world, then we are learning about compassion, not just from a book, but in real life. So first step is learn about compassion. The second one is look at your own world, your own self, your own family, your own ecosystem in a way. And when we come up against our own world, what we see is resistance. Procrastination is the most common manifestation of resistance because it's the easiest to rationalize. We don't tell ourselves, I'm never going to do that hard thing. I'm never going to write my book. Instead, we say, I'm going to write my book. I'm just going to start tomorrow. And then we say it again tomorrow. So looking at our own world is the second step. The third is compassion for yourself. And I have a question that I didn't find earlier. Remember, Jesus said, love others as you love yourself. So that requires loving yourself. So if you have compassion for yourself, listen to this question. If you judged others like you judge yourself, would you have any friends? When I answered that, I said no. I wouldn't have friends if I was as hard on my friends as I am on myself. That tells me that it's time to befriend myself more. So compassion for yourself, third step. The fourth step is empathy. And empathy is moving toward rather than away from. We always have some level of fear in us. At least I think most of us do. And we'd rather push suffering away and pretend that the grief that we see everywhere in the world has nothing to do with us. We don't want grief out there to touch the grief that's in here. But if we do that, if we always push suffering away, we push brokenness away, then we will remain locked in a cage that is not true to who we are. The cage will be a version of ourselves that is inferior to who we actually are. And so that's important to recognize. The fifth step, 5, is mindfulness. We're rarely in situations that require big decisions. We have lots of small decisions every day. I read a story about a volunteer who was going with somebody whose house had been destroyed in a tornado. And she realized as she went with the homeowner with the house destroyed that she couldn't have any idea of what was worth salvaging if she didn't know the person at all, if the person was a stranger. And so she talked and listened with the homeowner of the home that was no longer there, and she worked on helping to understand what might be worth salvaging. It's hard to know what's important to someone else when you don't know them. And so we get to know ourselves with mindfulness. We get to know God better with mindfulness. And we come to know others better with mindfulness, with breathing, and with an openness to be aware. So the sixth step is action. First you listen, then you act. What small act of compassion has someone done for you lately? Which of these two is easier for you, to be nice or to refrain from being mean? I guess that depends on the situation. So the sixth step is action. Now, I'm coming on the seventh step now. How little we know is the seventh step. A compassionate answer when someone asks you something is, I'm not sure. And of course, even better, you get bonus points for saying, help me understand the question and where you're asking it from. And so, how little we know. If we jump in certain of the answer and just wanting to make them believe like we do, or make them see things as we do, that's not compassion. And so I begin to notice how little we make space for the other in social interactions. Western society is highly opinionated. We see that across the U.S. We think our point of view is the only one that matters. So in this step, how little we know, seventh step, we appreciate the unknowable. And I love this suggestion from Karen Armstrong. She suggests that you participate daily in an experience that touches you deeply beyond words. The more I know, she says, the more I realize I don't know. It humbles me. Do you know someone who seems proud of knowing everything that matters? Do we try too hard to win arguments? Are we too reluctant to admit, I don't know? So if we leave room for the mystery that we see around us, certainty will try to pull us in the opposite direction of love. Being wrong sometimes is a key to compassion. So participating in the mystery of life reminds us each day, maybe we don't know. Maybe we think we're certain. Maybe there should be a little bit of openness to what might be going on. I highly recommend mystery and wonder every day. So step number 8, how should we speak to one another is the question in step 8. And Karen Armstrong says, change your tone. We've all been talked to with that tone. You know, when you're a kid and your mom's mad at you or your dad's mad at you, they use a tone with you. We recognize it. We all do. And then we go ahead and repeat it, and we use it with other people. It's not just what we say, but it's how we say it. It's not only our words that count, but also our tone. So think about how we ask God for everything. We ask God for what we need. We ask God for what we want. We ask God for what we long for, which right now is rain in this area. We long for it. It's the cry of our hearts. We ask God. God will never answer us with that tone, that shaking the finger tone, where God knows everything and you're kind of dumb. And no, God never does that. So God always answers with love and not that tone. So we can embody that for ourselves. The 9th step, the last one I'm going to talk about today, is concern for everybody. When we are different, the difference could keep us from being compassionate. So when we see someone who is other, sometimes disabled people seem very other to us. Now that's becoming less and less true. Sometimes black people are seen as other from white people, and I hope that that's becoming less and less. But I know that black people talk about how when people are walking down the street, white people will see black people approach, especially black men, and they'll clutch their purses tightly, or they'll step out of the path, or they'll cross the street to avoid the difference. And there's a fear in that that is probably not justified. But there's a self-centeredness in it as well, preconceptions, suspicion of other, fear of difference. The certain assumption is that we're right, which relates to 8, to how we speak to one another. And so, if we're concerned for everybody, then we offer compassion, and we will see it reflected. So yeah, what we're looking for is compassion, equanimity. We're looking for equanimity, which is even keel, not reacting in a strong way, but being peaceful while we respond rather than react. We're looking for equanimity, love, compassion, and then of course all of that frees us for joy. So how have these steps meant something to you in the last week? And try to observe what they mean to you in the coming week. How does compassion grow and appear? And how do we become aware of compassion in our lives? Amen.